Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you would join us for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please pray with me if you'd like to. Dear Lord, as we gather this evening, we are reminded of the responsibility entrusted to us and the importance of the work before us. It's a privilege to serve this community and take part in decisions that shape the future. Lord, grant us steady judgment, open minds, and the spirit of cooperation. Guide our decisions to be thoughtful, respectful, and productive. May our decisions reflect wisdom, fairness, and a shared commitment for greater good for this community. Lord, thank you for the privilege of public service and for this community we are proud to call home. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Before I ask for an approval of the agenda, there are going to be two changes. Under our public hearings, 10A5, I'm actually going to move down to number 7 so that our number 6 and 7, where we have applicants in the audience, they can be heard first. And then 9B1 is going to be pulled. Excuse me, not 9. Where did it go? Sorry, 9B2 is going to be pulled. And we'll see that most likely on the next meeting. And with that, if there's no other changes, I'll accept a motion for approval.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Landry?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. It was brought to my attention late yesterday evening that Commissioner Townsend wouldn't be able to make the meeting this evening and possibly the next 1 or 2 meetings for a medical issue. So, if you could just keep her in her prayers and things of that nature, and she'll update us as she finds out more information and can get back into the game.
Yes, absolutely. Well, definitely thoughts and prayers are with her. And with that, presentation was pulled, so we'll go into public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board? Good evening.
Good evening. Well, I surely hope that all is well with Kathy Townsend. I'm really sorry to hear that she's not doing well right now. I wanted to address something. After my last time here, I heard that I should have been silenced. And let me be clear, this is America. Citizens do not need permission to question the government. I'm not here to make accusations of bribery, corruption, or illegal conduct. I'm here to speak about responsibility, because this board is making decisions every day that directly affect this community. And with that comes a duty. Under the Florida law, conflicts of interest must be disclosed and should be said in the meeting, and not just I have to go do some paperwork and I'll be back. The public has a right to be heard, and under the First Amendment, the people have the right to speak, question, and challenge the government. Speeches do not have to be polite to be protected. Discomfort is not a constitutional standard. Each of you took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. An oath is not ceremonial. It is a binding commitment to operate within the Constitution and faithfully perform the duties of this office. That means when you sit in those seats, you're not acting as a private individual. You are exercising public power, and that power is limited. Thomas Jefferson reminds us the basis of our government is the opinion of the people. The government exists because of we the people. The authority in this room comes from the people, and it is limited by the rights of the people. As Alexander Hamilton put very simply, here the people govern. Your voice in that seat is supposed to be the voice of your constituents, and representation does not stop when participation stops. Now, this is not about one issue, but it does show up in how issues are handled. When the public sees inconsistency, whether it's recusals, disclosures, or how standards are applied, that becomes a process problem. And process is what builds or breaks public trust. From the public's perspective, there have been recusals tied to a major development in District 5. And in other situations involving similar or related parties, there have not been a recusal. So I want to be clear, I'm not making accusations, I'm asking for consistency, because the public should not have to guess how decisions are being made and when authority is exercised. It carries responsibility. Legal protections exist for public officials, but those protections depend on staying within clearly established constitutional limits. That's the framework this system was built on. So my only question is have any of you actually read the full Constitution? Do you understand more than just the first 5 amendments of the Constitution when you're sitting up here making these votes? Thank you.
Thank you. So really quick, I believe it's Justin Harrison. Is that right? I didn't want to interrupt you. Justin Harrison. Harrison.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We're still under public comment. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Seeing no movement, I'm going to close public comment and come back to our proclamation for National Nurses Week in St. Lucie County.
Resolution number 26-068, a resolution proclaiming the week of May 6 through 12, 2026 as National Nurses Week in St. Lucie County, Florida. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners of St. Lucie County, Florida has made the following determinations. Nurses are the backbone of the healthcare system, providing compassionate, skilled, and evidence-based care to individuals, families, and communities across St. Lucie County. Nurses play a vital role in promoting health, preventing illness, and improving patient outcomes across diverse settings, including hospitals, clinics, schools, and community organizations. The dedication, resilience, and unwavering commitment of nurses have been especially evident during times of public health challenges, demonstrating their courage, leadership, and adaptability in the face of adversity. Nurses serve not only as caregivers, but also as educators, advocates, and leaders who contribute to advancing the quality and acceptability of health care within our community. The education and preparation of future nurses through institutions such as local nursing programs and partnerships with healthcare organizations ensure the continued strength and excellence of the nursing profession. National Nurses Week, observed annually from May 6th through 12th, recognizes the invaluable contributions of nurses and culminates on May 12th, the birthday of Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing. Now therefore be resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of St. Lucie County, Florida, does hereby proclaim the week of May 6th through 12th, 2026 as National Nurses Week in St. Lucie County, Florida, and encourages all residents to join in honoring and celebrating the dedication, compassion, and essential contributions of nurses within our community. Passed and duly adopted this 5th day of May, 2026.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have with us today Lisa Rivera to accept the...
Actually, Janae.
Oh, Janae? Okay, nice to meet you.
Assistant annual one.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. All right, if you'd like to say a few words, and then feel free to come up and with your photo, okay?
Yes. I would first like to thank the Board of County Commissioners for acknowledging Nurses Week. I would also like to sincerely recognize you guys for understanding what nurses do, how caring we are, how dedicated we are every day. Nursing is very hard. It's not an easy job, and I want to thank you. And at this time, I would like to present this proclamation to Assistant Dean Ro White for her dedication to nursing. I also have another professor with me, Professor Pauline McLaren, and I'm Professor Janae Mayon Gonzalez, and I want to thank everyone.
We want to thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry to also thank our clinical partners. Without you, we could not succeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, with that, is there an approval of the minutes from the April 14th meeting?
Motion to approve?
Second. Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. Is there anything anyone wants to pull? If not, I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And that brings us to our first public hearing. Have a good night, everyone. Evening, Corey.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Corey Benton, Planning and Zoning Manager, for the record. Thank you for the opportunity to present the set of public hearing items here, and I'll explain kind of the organization and best approach and staff's hopes of being as efficient as possible. But before I dive in, I did want to take a moment to recognize the collaborative team, the St. Lucie County Development Review Committee, from our Environmental Resources team, Public Works, Property Acquisitions, the Fire District, our traffic reviewers, FDOT partners, the folks over at the Economic Development Council, and the responsiveness of the applicant. This is a set of targeted industry proposals here this evening for Project Orchid, and independent of this evening's outcome and the vote from the board on the various items, I did want to highlight the expedited manner in which staff collaborated to evaluate the proposals and bring them forward this evening with community participation, with outreach, and thoroughness. So I did want to point that out and express my appreciation for the opportunity to present this evening.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And before you get started on this one, the applicant indicated that she wanted to swear everyone in. Are we going to start with this item, or? Okay. Okay. So, Madam Secretary, we're going to go ahead and swear everyone in that might be testifying or producing information regarding our Project Orchid.
Anyone who would like to give testimony today, please raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, floor is yours, Corey. Thank you.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So the presentation before you will cover agenda items 10A1, 10A2, 10A3, and 11A1. We'll provide some highlights as to the organization and the order before you. So the first item is a comprehensive plan future land use map amendment. This is a legislative item with a proposal to create a 20.85 acre sub area of the county's Lucy Rock mixed use activity area within the comprehensive plan. Additionally, we have a proposed amendment to the official zoning atlas that would affect 20.25 acres of land, transitioning from the industrial light zoning district to the industrial heavy. Conditional use permit, which proposes approximately a 76,200 square foot metal aluminum foundry. A development agreement amendment, which will be a subsequent presentation, which is the first reading of that quasi-judicial item. And then we also have a major site plan for the collective facility, proposing up to 1.4 million square feet, contributing to this impact glass and window manufacturing facility. The public hearings presented in this presentation were adequately noticed with a sign posted on the property, multiple signs indicating of this evening's public hearing. We had mailed notice to owners of property within 500 feet and a display ad in the local newspaper. The applicant did hold a community participation meeting as required under the terms of the code Wednesday, March 25th, out at the Sunshine Kitchen. It was attended by members of the public, a county commissioner, and interested parties. Here's an aerial map indicating the primary site location, which is just over 73 acres in size. There's some additional properties that are covered within the development agreement and would contribute to some of the interim construction activities and potentially on-site fill and grading immediately to the north, which we'll highlight soon. Again, the location north of the county's correctional facility, the north end of Rock Road, north of Orange Avenue, west of Kings Highway and Interstate 95. Here's a zoom in of the property. Previously impacted, but some scattered native and invasive species and trees on site. We have a road right-of-way to the north, to the east, south, and to the west, two portions of which are unopened to the west and south. The future land use was changed to the property a couple decades ago, bringing it into the mixed-use land use category. At the time, it was an expansion of the Orange Avenue and I-95 MXD, but it was specifically coined due to unique characteristics, the Lucy Rock MXD category as molded into our comprehensive plan. Providing for a variety of industrial and other non-residential uses as presented here. The western portion and half being within the medium intensity district and the eastern half being in the high intensity area. And at that time, the land use amendment included those lands to the north. There's one component, our MXD categories often have sub-area policies that are unique to approach future development, whether it's under the existing zoning designations or through a plan development. At this time, the comprehensive plan provides the provision that the height of all buildings and structures shall not be more than 60 feet on height. And of course, that's the subject of the proposed future land use map amendment that would specifically apply to 20.85 acres of the land as shaded and hashed here on this exhibit, allowing for the opportunity to pursue buildings and development up to 80 feet in height, where consistent with the underlying zoning and approved as part of a site plan or design review. This is considered a small-scale map amendment affecting less than 50 acres of land. Coupled with that, we have the existing zoning map of the property, with the western half being within our industrial light zoning district, the eastern half within our industrial heavy, lands to the north in both the industrial heavy and industrial extraction zoning districts. Further across road and canal rights of way to the west, we have the former Sunnyland Farms PUD that has an expired development plan, but has petitioned for reactivating that development to the west. To the south, across drainage canals and road rights of way, we have the county's correctional facility in our institutional zoning district, amongst other lands in a residential area. To the east, also industrial extraction. In the southeast, in our industrial heavy, and further southeast toward the intersection, we have undeveloped lands in our commercial general district. But certainly adjacent to the Florida Department of Transportation's strategic intermodal systems with I-95, a turnpike, although there's not an on-ramp at Orange Avenue and State Road 68, there is, of course, the entry at Okeechobee Road to the south and State Road 70. The proposed rezoning would affect 20.25 acres of land as depicted on screen, transitioning that area to the industrial heavy. It does carry a slight uptick in permissible conditional uses, but the primary component sought by the applicant relates to the ability to pursue building height above the industrial lights cap at 50 feet, whereas the industrial heavy district allows for proposed buildings up to 80 feet in height. Of course, depiction of the 20.25 acres, not pushing westerly toward the entire outward boundaries or perimeter to allow for any step downs should this project not proceed in the future. There are some safeguards built in. So the site before you has an extensive history. Back in September of 2013, the Board of County Commissioners approved the site plan and associated development agreement to facilitate build out of what's called the St. Lucie Commerce Center. That site plan and associated development agreement has remained active. Initially, it had a 10-year period through a state emergency order declaration and the afforded extension of that development order. Both remain active, the development agreement through 2027, providing for development plan of just over 1.2 million square feet of buildings and other support space in that flex, industrial light, industrial heavy configuration, planning stormwater, internal streets, and the ability for small scale users, but also the assemblage of land. As we'll dive into more this evening, that associated development agreement accounted for various roadway, transportation improvements off-site, stormwater, and different deliverables as part of that negotiated commitment from both parties. The proposal this evening, of course, is to retool that site plan to achieve the proposed Project Orchid major site plan and associated petitions. And on screen, we have that overall site plan before you, proposing up to 1.4 million square feet of facility, vertically integrated operations for manufacturing of high-end windows, launching with access Rock Road to the east with 2 secure gated access facilities, employee parking oriented around a 2-story office on the east side, and then the overall manufacturing facility toward the central portion of the property and stormwater area, serving additionally as buffering on the west side adjacent to those rights of way. And we'll highlight and overlay onto this development plan the various petitions. So the 20.85 acres of land that's affected under the proposed future land use map amendment is displayed on screen in red. Again, the goal behind that to provide height relief above the 60-foot cap in this particular area. Because the manufacturing operations, sorting, storage, and the warehouse distribution component are intended to be entirely within a building, a structure, concealed, to be able to control airflow, cleanliness, you name it, in that atmosphere within a building, to dampen noise, dust, odor, anything like that. So this facility intending to be modernized and preventing some of those externalities, but needing that additional height and operational space to facilitate their complete operations. The rezoning area is overlaid in black here, 20.25 acres, allowing for within that area in overlapping in red up to 80 feet, and the area outside of red up to what would be the 60 feet, the underlying remaining limitation outside of the newly proposed sub-area of the MXD. Then toward the northeast, the conditional use permit area, the proposed aluminum foundry, which serves to launch the manufacturing process in the vertically integrated operations. Again, situated internal to the overall industrial area, far from any property zoned residential or planned unit development, intending to be within that secure, linked building design. You can see from the site plan the loading and delivery bays being on the east side of the structure, keeping any of that reverse backup movements of vehicles on the east side of the building to dampen any noise. And then, of course, how the building wraps around, that's intended to dampen and avoid any noise traveling to the south toward the correctional facility. Here's a color rendering provided by the applicant, presenting their goals at complete development of this predominantly one-phase complex. The site plan provides for dedication of right-of-way, improvements to roadways, and will certainly highlight some of those offered enhancements to pursue support for their overall operations. But of course, the Development Review Committee considering it to ensure that it meets the minimum standards or exceeds those standards as depicted in the county's Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan. Here's simply a zoom in on the foundry location, which is subject to the third public hearing this evening, the conditional use permit. As highlighted, they provided a preliminary floor plan and the goal height of that portion of the complex at 60 feet. See the various entrances and the ability to move goods, products through the building, limiting some of the outdoor movements. So transportation impacts. Those were key facets of the active development agreement, as well as review of projects of this scale. As we've heard through some of the incentive discussions, the potential for substantial employment at Project Orchid, of course bringing employees in, deliveries, movements of goods for exportation, whether it's across the region, the United States, or globally. So the traffic assessment being quite critical, with the complete build-out potentially generating just over 6,000 daily trips, signing 736 AM peak hour trips and 910 estimated in the PM peak hour. The immediate intersection improvements that were recommended in the traffic analysis corresponding with Rock Road and Orange Avenue include construction of turn lanes, the integration of a second southbound lane shared through a right turn lane, construction of an additional eastbound receiving lane on Orange Avenue. We'll get into details later. The recommendation for an additional westbound lane Orange Avenue between Kings Highway and Rock Road, and then the installation of a traffic signal as warranted. So this is simply a subset of the slated and recommended traffic improvements specific to that intersection at Rock Road and Orange Avenue. For context, this is a aerial exhibit with various development projects either approved, vested, or proposed for future consideration with regards to the location here at Project Orchid. Of course, some of the roadways on screen not in existence, but as we consider new development, whether it's non-residential, driving jobs and employment, county planning, engineering staff collaborating with the Transportation Planning Organization and FDOT are examining ways to move people about safely and efficiently to make sure that folks can live, work, and play in our community successfully. The Planning and Zoning Commission held hearings on the first three items before you this evening: the future land use map amendment, the rezoning, and the conditional use permit. After holding individual public hearings, question and answer, the commission did offer unanimous recommendations for each item. As noted in the staff report on screen, there was dialogue and recommendations to both county staff and the applicant to collaborate during the construction phase, should the project be approved. The construction phase extends out 18 to 24 months. Of course, a development of this scale would working collaboratively to explore ways to move construction-related traffic through the intersection at Rock Road and Orange Avenue in an efficient manner, potentially avoiding peak hours when folks are heading to work or school, and then being able to collaborate and provide feedback and refinements of some of those operations as needed to ensure safe and pain-free endeavor as possible. Of course, for full operations, we have a schedule of slated roadway improvements, but usually those are under development coinciding with the project itself. And sometimes when we're closing lanes or blocking off portions of the roadway to make those infrastructure improvements, we have to be very strategic at moving people about safely to avoid backups and other delays. So that was the feedback predominantly from the Planning and Zoning Commission that staff certainly would be attentive to, whether it's directive in the development agreement or as part of our traditional roadway improvement agreements and permitting. So moving along to staff's recommendations. Again, as I noted, the St. Lucie County Development Review Committee collaborated with intricate detail and with our findings as presented in the staff report, the consistency with the applicable standard of review, county's comprehensive plan, and of course the economic development potential. Staff is recommending that the Board of County Commissioners for 10A1 evaluate the proposed future land use map amendment for the 20.85 acres and approve it. For agenda item 10A2, and Madam Chair, maybe I can stop and we can hold individual public hearings, or I continue on with these recommendation slides. Your call.
let's go ahead and finish with the recommendations.
Fantastic, thank you. For item 10A2, the rezoning, staff is recommending approval for the 20.25 acres. That, of course, is a quasi-judicial matter. For the conditional use permit covering the proposed foundry at 76,000 square feet, just above, recommendation of approval, including the following conditions, is integrated in the site plan. That site-specific control measures are integrated to minimize off-site impacts related to air quality, filtration, odor. Any light fixtures throughout the facility are downcast as to avoid any impacts on surrounding lands. The integration of a berm and opaque wall or fence within the western landscape area. And last but not least, for this set, which this presentation does not include the amendment to the St. Lucie Commerce Center Development Agreement, recommendation on the major site plan that the board evaluate the standards review, but approve with conditions as drafted in Resolution 2026-84, as may be amended and superseded by the associated development agreement adjustment that's planned for review at first reading this evening. The applicant does have a presentation, and their design professionals and representatives are here to answer specific questions outside of staff's purview.
Perfect, thanks, Corey. Before we proceed, though, since we've sort of meshed a couple of items together, so it made sense, and we didn't have to hear it 4 different times over, but we're going to go ahead and do our disclosures right now to get them out of the way, if that's okay. Commissioner Classy?
Yes, I'd like to disclose that I have met with the applicant team, staff, the general public. I attended the neighborhood meeting at Sunshine Kitchen and the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 16th.
Thank you. Commissioner Lowry?
Members of the Economic Development Council talking about the economic value of bringing to St. Lucie County, Ben and Corey, about site plan rezoning, building height, applicant, all about their company, the product, and the economic value bringing to St. Lucie County.
And I am the applicant team, EDC, Katie and Knight, and Wes McCurry, talking about the company, potential incentives, job, employment. Our county team, from planning to administration to county attorney, and also watch the PNC.
And I've spoken to staff, Corey and Ben, the county attorney, and the applicant, and some people in the Economic Development Council, Andrea Zambano, Janine Valentine, Andrew Sanini, Ted Elan, this name I can't pronounce, Yaquin Virgo, Patty Tobin, Cade Knight from EDC, and Wes McCurry.
All right, thank you. And with that, would the applicant like to come up?
And I apologize for messing those names up.
We appreciate it. Good evening. I'm Kristen Spake. I'm the attorney for the applicant, Foundry Commercial Developer LLC. Thank you. And just to make sure I don't have to get up and do this 4 times, or I will if I need to. Are we opening 4 hearings currently?
So I'm going to defer to my county attorney, but I do believe I'll still need to open each one up for public comments.
That makes sense.
Yes, I think each one needs to be opened up for public comment, but I think you are hearing everything they say for them all.
Understood.
I appreciate that. Okay, in that case then, I will only do this 1 time, so thank you. I thank you to staff, and Corey's so much more eloquent, and he did a great job of saying it, but we really appreciate the thorough review and the time and effort and the recommendations of approval, of course, and thank you to you all, Madam Chair and Vice Chair and members of the Commission, for your time and attention to our presentation and your consideration of the project. We're joined here today by our development team, and I have here resumes for each of our experts. I want to submit those into evidence now to document their expertise and qualify them as experts. So I have a resume for Stephanie Guerra, our traffic engineer, Paul Ezzo, our environmental consultant, Jordan Haggerty, our civil engineer, and Paul Anderson, also our civil engineer, Patty Tobin, our planner, and Unique Virgo, the representative for the applicant. And so I have 4 sets of them.
If you would just hand them to the secretary
you.
right here, and she will make sure they are entered in. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And so we'll be pleased to answer any questions. You're going to hear from Patty Tobin in a minute to get a better presentation than I just gave. And we appreciate your vote of approval.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. Patty Tobin, HJA Design Studio. As you can see from the cover of our PowerPoint, that's the office building, which you'll be able to see from Rock Road. This is our project team. They're in the audience to answer any questions. I'd like to reiterate what Corey mentioned, and that's we wouldn't have gotten this far without the loyalty, dedication, and cooperation of the staff. There's no question about that. I'm going to go through this quickly because we've done a lot of duplication. We've got a 72-acre site, former grove. This shows our plan trying to protect the adjacent residential to the west is our intent. I think what's important is that this area was selected by a company that has its headquarters in Miami, and it's designing this facility to serve its customer in the southeast. It's a modern, fully enclosed manufacturing operation using advanced technology. And as Corey mentioned, it's 1.4 million square feet, fully integrated. The two-story office building is about 27,000 square feet. Corey mentioned the traffic and the improvements we're going to be making. We did meet individually with some owners in the vicinity, and they're very happy to hear about the improvement to Rock Road. Planning and Zoning Board did bring up am I going backwards? Oh. The construction impacts, and we're going to address those. It's important to the company as well. As has been mentioned, there's 1,000 jobs paying over minimum county wages, and it's a $53 million annual payroll and over $1 million in ad valorem taxes. Our community outreach, we did meet individually with some owners, and then we had our community meeting. The company selected St. Lucie County. Part of its competition was because of the availability of the industrially zoned land, access to workforce and training programs, strong infrastructure and utilities, proximity to their major markets, and a supportive economic development environment. As Corey mentioned, the reason for the comp plan amendment is to allow for portions of the building to go beyond the 60 feet. Due to the nature of the building, the enclosed system, and the production, about 6% of the building will need a height of 80 feet. And I think we have a plan I'll show later that shows those particular segments. So that's the reason for the comp plan amendment. This shows you the way the property is presently designated in the comprehensive plan, with the medium intensity on the west side and the high intensity on the east side. This shows the hatched area, which we'd be taking to high intensity again to allow portions of the building to be in excess of 60 feet. The rezoning, again, we have two zoning districts, IH and IL. Industrial heavy, industrial light. The industrial light limits, I think it's actually 50 feet, right? I have 60, it's actually 50 feet. That limits the height to buildings to 50 feet. Again, about 6% of the building will require that 80 feet. And the area is about 20.25 acres. And most of this is all required as a result of the production manufacturing process. Again, this is the current zoning, IL on the west and IH on the east. Proposed is the 20.25 acres to heavy to allow for that height allowance of 80 feet. The conditional use is for the foundry shown in blue, which is actually in the heavy already. It's not listed as a use in the industrial heavy zoning district, so staff had recommended that we apply and proceed with conditional use permit, and that's what we're doing. The foundry is about 5.5% of the building, and that's the furnace. This conditional use permit, as well as other operations, are going to require an air permit from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in conjunction and coordination with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. The permit will address the quality, the air quality of the furnace, as well as the paint component of the manufacturing process. Once the permit is issued, it will require annual testing and semi-annual reporting. And you've seen our site plan, and I'm going to see if I can show you generally. Oops. See where the arrow is now? Well, can you do it on your end? Actually, those two, that shows on that one, Corey. You can see those two elevated areas on the web, that one and that one. Those are the areas where the height is necessary for the racking system. Thanks, Corey. Oh, it was actually on my landscape plan. I'll go through these quickly. These are building design. I think you're going to have it's going to be a very attractive building from Rock Road, and then most of it will be very few openings. The facility operates, again, Corey mentioned it, everything is enclosed, it's done within the building, nothing takes place on the outside. We'll meet all the environmental protection requirements. And our utilities are water and sewer from FPUA and electric from Florida Power. What this facility doesn't include is any outdoor manufacturing and no exposed production areas and no noticeable odors and no visible emissions. I'm here to answer any questions as well as our team. And again, I can't thank the county staff enough for how cooperative and encouraging this process has been for a great project for St. Lucie County.
Thank you, thank you. Questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Lee?
what are the hours of operation?
Initially, it's going to be,
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Unique Virgo with Foundry Commercial. So the first year, they're going to start with one shift, so that will be 8 hours. And then as they ramp up to increase the employees to 1,000, it will be running 24/7s.
Very good, thank you.
about year 5.
Yeah, year 5.
Good. That was all I had.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Cosby?
The traffic counts reflect a 24-hour operation?
Yes.
Okay. I've looked into this project a tremendous amount. I've been to numerous meetings about it. I'm in support of it. I am interested to hear if there's anybody from the public here today that's not specifically in support of it, but the sheer number of jobs that it's going to produce and the average wage, I mean, it's most of the people that'll be working here will be making more than teachers in St. Lucie County, which is kind of sad. Also, today's Teacher Appreciation Day, just in case you were wondering. But I'm in support of the project. I do have a couple other questions real quick, though. Did we decide if the wall was going to go in front of or behind the retention pond in the back of the building?
We're working out that design now with staff. Personally, I like the wall on the outside because then it makes the person that has the manufacturing operation take care of their property.
We'd probably like you to take care of it either way.
Well, I know, but people forget what's behind the wall.
It's true. And then as far as the acquisition of right-of-way on Orange Avenue to accommodate the turn lanes, did we have visual of that on the presentation?
I think we have something Corey's got.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Clasby, the intersection, we can certainly pull up some of those specifics. Staff, because there are details as to how it would be approached in the development agreement, That's where staff loaded a lot of those details. But as it's, I think, a key factor of the major site plan and overall development, I've put on screen one exhibit. This exhibit is contained in the active development agreement with St. Lucie County and the St. Lucie Commerce Center. And this lane configuration, this design, which is 10 years old, 13 years old essentially, was prepared at that time, considering traffic activities in the area with the add-on development of over 1 million square feet of industrial space. It provided turn lanes, improvements, a secondary eastbound lane on Orange Avenue between Rock Road and Kings Highway, as well as signalization at this threshold over 1 million square feet. Just for graphic purposes, of course not a final design by any means, as those considerations are under development at the moment. The anticipation is that this project would be pursuing 2 eastbound lanes on Orange Avenue as well as 2 westbound lanes on Orange Avenue between Kings Highway and Rock Road, with a westbound to northbound right turn lane as depicted on screen generally. And so what I've mapped out, and again this is quick rendering for discussion, the dashed area in red is that area in which at minimum right-of-way needs are likely to occur. Now with stormwater drainage, with sidewalks, with other safety approaches, it's quite possible that trim of right-of-way would be needed east of here and potentially swinging into the radius at Rock Road and Orange Avenue. But yes, to your point, the development agreement identifies that likely need. It provides provisions for the developer to pursue actively that acquisition to facilitate the improvements. It has some metrics for them to adhere to in the event that the property owner to the northeast declines or rejects any attempts for negotiated purchase, and then it places basically a relief valve where the applicant would or developer would contribute up to 150% of the fair market appraised value, and the county then would pursue at the direction of the policymakers, potentially pursue that to facilitate that improvement. So there's a few different scenarios and options, but definitely the primary route and the goal is for all necessary improvements to be constructed and achieved by the developer, but certainly some options should that not be achievable.
So could you just speak real quick to the timing of the roadway improvements versus the CO of the building and actually the operation of the building? Does it have to have first, or?
Certainly, Commissioner. And in the development agreement terms, we've spelled out a series of improvements that would be necessary prior to the certificate of occupancy, and then some of those that might be a more threshold item. So just for a quick reference, prior to the first certificate of occupancy, and this is linked to the the development agreement, but highlighted intersection improvements, Orange Avenue, construction of the turn lanes, southbound left turn lane, Orange Avenue, those second eastbound and westbound lanes, North Rock Road, they would need to improve the paved section terminates just north of the entry to the correctional facility. That would need to be extended north. They'd have a northbound left turn lane into their project entry. Their first southern entry, secondary entry to the north doesn't have the same volumes, and then improvements around to their northwestern access, and then certain improvements related to the final CO if there's different nodes or portions of the building, and then the threshold obligations, signals. There's the warrant evaluation where during that phase 1 operations, 8 hours single shift, it may not trigger the need for the signal to be implemented, but that's where we would capture traffic volumes after 90 days of CO, 180 days, 360 days, something like that, to make sure that that signal is launched when needed. Very similar case study is down at the Kings Highway warehouse south of Love's on the east side of Kings, and Stonemont Financial Complex on the west side. they built the entryways, as they were gearing up and hopeful to have occupants of those buildings, the signal design, permitting, and construction was facilitated. It's more of a passive intersection now and would be signal optimization and transition when the time comes that signal needs to be accommodating traffic and truck movement. So stages for the signal itself based upon traffic volumes. But of course, a commitment documented in the proposed development agreement amendment.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for now.
Okay. Madam Chair,
Commissioner Lowry?
just a couple comments. I think this is the first project of this size as far as the amount of jobs, kind of echoing what Commissioner Klasby said, the amount of jobs that are being proposed, and I really, truly appreciate it because sometimes we have businesses that come in and they may only be projecting to, fill 100 seats in jobs, and 1,000 is truly significant for the state of our economy here in St. Lucie County. So I really think also staff did a great job with all the detailed conditions of approval for the infrastructure, making sure it's in place. And I look forward to this being approved. I think the building is absolutely beautiful. The aesthetic looks amazing and can't wait to see this up and going. Thank you.
You lean forward? Okay, I wasn't sure. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. I do also have some questions, comments, but I'm going to hold mine until we have the public come up. So this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this item? Okay, so for clarification, it's item 10A1, which is going to be the future land use map
Yep.
amendment.
Perfect. Justin Harrison. I just like to say that I think this looks good. I mean, it's in a heavy industrial. Heavy industrial allows for a lot of environmental, type of industries to come in. I think this is a good industry to come in to that heavy industrial. Getting a little bit of a, change from light industrial to heavy, I think is beneficial since everything that they're going to be doing there. The only concern that I would have had is pretty much been covered, which is going to be the traffic there at Orange Avenue and Rock Road. So I think the project looks really good, honestly.
Thank you. We're still under public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on this item? Seeing no movement, I'm going to close public comment. I have a couple questions. So I don't know who wants to speak on behalf of the foundry component from the applicant side. Okay, you're good. You're good. So, the foundry is obviously very intense. It melts metals. So what sort of vibration or noises can we expect? And then after that, I'll defer over to Corey and see if we've put any guardrails to address those if there's any.
Okay, so within the foundry, the process is to receive the aluminum ingots. They're then sort of conveyed into a furnace, and then they're melted down. And then they're sort of formed into profiles, and they're taken over to the aluminum plant where they're essentially assembled into the windows. Vibration, I would have to sort of, take confirm with our client as to if there's any on the equipment. With regards to sound, everything is contained within the building, so either through dampening on the equipment itself or through the building itself would help with the sound. And just to add on to that, there is a quite intense filtration system. So once the furnace is operating, there's additional sort of a fume treatment system. So by the time we're exhausting from the foundry, it's a clean product, and that's what led to us having to get for an air permit.
Okay. So then, Corey, it sounds as though our noise ordinance, that they wouldn't be exceeding that, so will we be putting that in there to ensure for the quality of the neighbors around them that will eventually be coming, that it's not sounding like a racetrack over there during certain hours of the day?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. And condition of approval number 4 looks to implementation of those control measures to minimize those impacts that you stated. Our noise ordinance addresses receiving properties, particularly residential, which we would potentially have further to the west and southwest, far from the foundry, but definitely the overall facility being a consideration. Each component would need to adhere to that. Different times of day, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. We have a 60 dBA level, 55 during the evening, nighttime, early morning hours. One consideration, as always, when we talk about that type of limit and regulation, could be establishing a benchmark or a baseline of noise. I know that's been discussed on various projects with members of the board, including this one, of making sure that that's established, presumably staff administered or oversight, but the responsibility of the applicant, so we can understand some of those control volumes from Interstate 95 to the northeast, anything that might be happening in the facility to the south, and even some of the industrial heavy operations to the southeast. So we have a good place to refer back to at the onset of operations.
Okay. All right, got it. I do have some more, but that's really environmental, on the environmental side, so I don't want to do it under the future land use map one. Would you suggest I bring up some of these comments for the developers agreement, some of the things that I want to, so there's some things I want to ask the applicant. What I would like to do is, prior to them being operational, is for them to, for at least 90 days, monitoring the air quality in the area so that we have a baseline of what's out there before they start operating. I definitely want, or the board, to consider fence line and stack monitoring. You talked about the emissions, and yes, you do have to get a state air permit, but I think we all know what it's like when you're working with outside agencies. You're not always dialed in immediately when there's issues, and so I know it's very advanced. However, when you are talking about some of the chemicals that are emitted from foundries, I want to ensure that, again, we're keeping our residents safe. So those are some of the things I want to make sure that we have in place. And again, it depends also on the type of furnace. So now I'm really getting into it. Is it an induction? Is it a cupola? Is it an electric? But I want to make sure we have HEPA filtered vacuums. I want to make sure that the stacks are monitored to ensure visible emissions don't exceed a certain extent. So definitely want to address the environmental side of it. Again, I don't want to take up too much time, so I just want to make sure that I'm putting those comments on the record, and we'll need to address those further and make sure that they're encapsulated in the developer agreement or conditions of approval.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my recommendation would be, as part of the third public hearing on the conditional use permits, and that's specifically the foundry element, Land Development Code Section 110704 regarding conditions on conditional use permits provides that the Board of County Commissioners shall attach such conditions, limitations, and requirements to a conditional use permit as necessary to effectuate the purposes of Section 110701, which is our general provisions, and carry out the spirit and purpose of the code and comprehensive plan. So I think those comments and addressing any potential adverse effects on adjacent properties, certainly associated with that conditional use permit, that's the best place to recommend them, in my opinion.
Got it.
The development agreement might be another area to echo them.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop my comments there. I do agree. I am very excited to have a big business like this coming in north of Midway Road for our North County residents so they can stop traveling so far. And again, the fact that I think, if I recall correctly, there's at least 5 essentially entry-level positions that are making well upwards of, $25 an hour. And we know the average is 28. So it's going to bring a really good injection in North County. So With that, if there's no other questions or comments for this one item, I'll go ahead and,
Make a motion to approve item A1, 10A1.
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, with that, we're going to go into 10A2, which we've already done the presentation. This is quasi judicial. We've already done that. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on the rezoning portion of the same project, you have the floor. Seeing no movement, I'm going to close public comment, come back to the board for the rezoning portion, 10A2. Any further comments, discussion?
No, ma'am.
No?
Not here.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. We don't have to do a public hearing?
Yeah, I opened and closed it, sir.
Make a motion to approve 10A2.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. 10A3, the conditional use permit. I'm going to go ahead again. This is a public hearing item. Anyone wishing to address the board on the cup portion of Project Orchid? Seeing no movement, I'm going to close public comment and come back to the board. Corey?
Yes, Madam Chair.
And/or board, since there's quite a few, and again, it's just from a safety standpoint and wanting to make sure that there's public transparency and reporting and accountability and ensuring we know there's a problem if a problem pops up. What is going to be the best way to sort of encapsulate some of the items I've mentioned in whoever makes a motion?
I believe you're in Resolution 2026-83, and under Provision B is the conditional use permit provisions. It already includes that the applicant shall implement site-specific control measures to minimize off-site impacts related to noise, vibration, and odor on adjacent properties. I assume you would want to add something of that they would obtain the appropriate EPA and DEP permits, provide monitoring reports. I forgot the rest that she said, so I apologize.
No, I know, sorry, no worries. I'd like to have the 90 days of baseline air quality monitoring done ahead, so we have that baseline. I want to make sure there's some sort of monitoring, like a fence line and stack monitoring systems, which are pretty standard from my understanding. Again, depending on what type of foundry, I want to make sure if it's applicable that there's no dry sweeping and it's all enclosed handling. And then I want to make sure that these reports are accessible either via their website or submitted to us so that we have these in. Yep.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Glassman.
So, do we have the ability to make them do a pre-con environmental study, air quality?
I do not know that answer.
So, that's kind of my question. I understand what your idea is there, but I don't know if we can force them to pay for it. And then the ongoing monitoring from staff, that's a budgetary item as well, just to kind of keep in the back of our minds if EPA is already doing it. What were you thinking as far as whenever you said the study? Were you thinking that they were going
Not
to
a
initiate
study,
it?
90 days. So most foundries, so pretty much what I've asked for is what most conditional uses, what I found across are pretty standard for air quality emissions and things of that nature. So it would just be, really they should already be doing monitoring. So the monitoring would be done starting 90 days prior to create a baseline. So it also goes to help them, right? Because if they don't have a baseline, then we can't say what chemicals are or are not in the air and how many parts per million at this point. So it actually also behooves them to also have that data.
So I guess that's my question for the attorney. Do we have the authority to do that?
Catherine Barbieri, County Attorney. At this point, we're looking right now to see if we're preempted by the state. I honestly do not know the answer. I was not aware that this was coming up tonight. And if they want to agree to it, obviously, then there's no problem. But if they're, and I see they're getting up, if they're not agreeing, then we would need time to research.
So Madam Chair, Commissioners, we do agree with the monitoring. So part of the air permit, the initial permit that is submitted to FDEP, it's documentation. That's our initial permit for us to start construction. There's a second permit before we can even open and start operations. We need to get all the equipment in, start everything up, and then FDP comes in, we test everything, and we set a threshold. And then every year when we do our annual and semi-annual reporting, we have to maintain our base thresholds. So that's for the life of the facility.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
sharing those records with you when we submit to FDP is, we can absolutely do that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Madam Chair, yeah, that was what we were probably going to suggest, is putting on my old landfill hat. We had to do a lot of air quality testing and through the permitting process. Most of what you're asking is part of that permit. But I would maybe make the condition that when they submit their reports in, that they have to provide a copy to us and send them in every time that they do it. And I imagine in the beginning it may be very much like quarterly, it could be monthly, and then after a period of time, DEP will relax it and have it go to like a annual or semi-annual. But whatever the requirements are that they have to do by DEP, we'd maybe suggest that they copy us on that information and the results and the feedback back from DEP.
Okay. All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Clasby?
Corey, could you go over the elevations and just kind of, or maybe even the applicant, describe the foundry itself? Because before I ever saw any renderings or pictures, in my mind, I figured that there's going to be big chimneys, there's going to be big smokestacks, there's a lot of plumes coming out of there. However, whenever I went and talked with you guys, it didn't end up being that at all. So could you go over how the exhaust works?
Certainly, Madam Chair, Commissioner Clasby, and I would encourage the applicant to weigh in on, as we've taken a look at the site plans, some of the preliminary renderings and exhibits, which don't depict that, given some of the internalization of the systems. But at this stage, we don't have the full comprehensive architectural design details that would come through Florida Building Code review and Fire Prevention Code review. So I think the applicant can certainly speak to that. Where there's any mechanical equipment and projections on the roof, traditionally staff's recommending parapets and other architectural design features to provide for concealment. But as presented in the renderings, there's not those intrusive fixtures as presented. And there's usually a lot of scrubbers and different systems attached to the roof line itself.
And just for my own information, as far as our code goes for height, is a chimney considered the building, so it's restricted to the building height, or is it allowed to go higher?
Commissioner Clasby, we have within our height definition, and there were some refinements years ago that we allow for some latitude for architectural features or mechanical equipment not to exceed 20% or 12 feet above the maximum height to capture things, and that could be things like chimneys, spires. It could be solar equipment on top of a roof, things like that. So there's some latitude afforded in our height definition.
Would the applicant like to tell us about the exhaust system?
Sure. There is a fume treatment system that's part of the foundry, and it will be screened. It will sit on the east side of the foundry. So that is part of our design that we're going through right now with the design team, the mechanical engineer, and obviously our air permitting consultant to make sure that the design meets the requirements listed by FDP. And then, of course, the St. Lucie County Code with regards to height, noise, and vibration.
Okay.
Anything else?
No. I'd make a motion if anybody else didn't want to.
Oh, yeah.
I have no more
Commissioner
comments.
Lee, Commissioner Lowry? Any other comments? Okay.
Commissioner Fowler, what was the conditions that you wanted to add?
Maite was writing them, so I think she was writing them. I know she was writing them,
I'm
but I
gonna
don't know if
read-
she got them all.
I'm going to read what I think I caught here. So the applicant would have to include copies of their EAP and DEP permits, have no dry sweeping, have enclosed dry handling, provide any reports that they have to submit for monitoring monitoring to EPA and DEP to us within, 10 days, 30 days, I don't know if you have a preference, and that the permit include 90 days of baseline monitoring.
Is that good?
Yes, yes, sir.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve item 10A3 with the conditions that Maite just said.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. And we're going to skip really quick and go to the regular agenda item 11A1, which was the site plan for Project Orchid. This is a regular agenda item, no public hearing. I'll come to the board here. Are there questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the board. Item 10A4 is the first reading of the associated First Amendment of the St. Lucie Commerce Center Development Agreement. The public hearing for this specific item was duly noticed with separate notice, a display on the local newspaper, and mailers sent to owners of property within 500 feet. The development agreement, as established, covers the collective acreage displayed on screen, roughly 94 acres size, at the terminus of Rock Road. And the proposed amendment would trim that acreage, eliminating one parcel as displayed on screen, retaining the balance acreage to be acquired as part of the Project Orchid development. And as was previously mentioned, the parcel on the north side of the access road, potentially contributing to temporary construction laydown areas, stormwater, as well as some fill and movement of material to the site. Here's an aerial exhibit with great knowledge of what's surrounding the site. Again, the active development agreement is linked to the previous site plan for the St. Lucie Commerce Center, and we're looking for it to be adapted to the Project Orchid development plan schedule. The current development agreement has key facets as displayed on screen, approved back in September of 2013, covering over 94 acres with an initial term of 10 years. It's extended to November of 2027 via action at the state level. Uses linked to the industrial light and industrial heavy zoning districts, with intensity and the future land use category associated with the Lucy Rock MXD, those medium and high intensity areas that we discussed. The development agreement does have a cap at 1.232 million square feet of building space. That would be increased with this amendment, and we'll detail that in a moment. Currently, the 60-foot height maximum that would be transitioned, and of course, retooling the associated site plan, landscape details, off-site improvements, and utilities and stormwater to serve this development before you. So highlights of the proposed amendment, trimming the acreage down to about 85.5 acres, new 10-year term with the option of a one-time extension up to 5 years, retaining the industrial light and industrial heavy use options, but aligning that with the zoning atlas acted upon by the board this evening. The intensity remaining within the Lucy Rock MXD with those changes from the small scale amendment acted upon by the board this evening, increasing that building space up to 1.4 million square feet and adjusting the maximum height up to 80 feet as integrated into any approved site plans and development designs, reflecting on the updated site plan and landscape plans, providing for off-site traffic improvements, those new detail threshold improvements, and select proportionate fair share alternatives, and of course utilities and stormwater adapting to those needed services for this development plan. We've gone through their site plan and development approach in great detail, of course, with roadway improvements on the east and north side proposed. Serve the project itself. Those amendments and conditional use permit, which are molded into the development agreement adjustment. And then the transportation improvements, which we touched on this evening during the preceding items, but key provisions providing that the development agrees to make the following contributions toward off-site transportation or traffic improvements and their associated support stormwater facilities by either 1, constructing said improvements, or 2, providing proportionate share payment to the county for the purposes of such improvements at the election of the county, except where subject to the developer's best efforts within the time frame set forth. And best efforts, what are those and how would that transpire? We've acknowledged in the amendment that public right-of-way acquisition will be required to facilitate the permitting and construction of the roadway and traffic improvements described in detail and their associated support stormwater facilities. The developer is to lead the right-of-way acquisition effort, initiating and documenting the formal acquisition proposal with details set forth. The development is also authorized to provide a compensation up to 150% of the fair market value appraisal, which is inclusive of the costs of the land purchase, property owner's attorney's fees, and consultant fees. Should the pursuit of the acquisition be unsuccessful, and then it provides, if the development, of course, is not successful in obtaining the right-of-way, the option to provide the proportionate share contribution for those improvements. So what are those overall comprehensive improvements and which ones are linked to the likely right-of-way need? This is the broad spectrum of improvements that we discussed. Turn lanes at the intersection of Orange Avenue and Rock Road, inclusive of a traffic signal when the official warrant is authorized by the Florida Department of Transportation or the county. Orange Avenue expansion itself, the eastbound that second lane that was built into the preceding development agreement that exists, but also the addition of a second westbound lane from Kings Highway to Rock Road, in which that's the improvement in the provision that's anticipated to need the acquisition of that right-of-way, as well as the addition of that westbound to northbound right turn lane for traffic heading from the interstate or Kings Highway onto Rock Road heading to the facility. The various improvements are related to Rock Road itself, widening, paving, and improvements at the project access. As we highlighted previously, those essentially a 4-lane section between Rock Road and Kings Highway with a westbound turn lane approaching Orange Avenue. This is not to scale as to the length, but certainly staff's conceptual rendering just to show functionally what that type of adaptation from the active development agreement to what the likely design could be, and of course the need to explore, pursue, and hopefully achieve right-of-way to facilitate the full spectrum of improvements. There's one aspect of the draft development agreement that's been presented during first reading, and of course, actions to approve or modify development agreements require 2 public hearings, 2 readings before the board. So tonight we're looking for your feedback, questions, and direction as to integral components of this amendment. And as drafted, there's of course under state law the potential for impact fee credits from the county assigned to the developer or those folks improving roadways or providing payments in lieu of roadway improvements. But there is in the background consideration for economic development incentives. One facet of those eligible economic development incentives includes an impact fee, road impact fee waiver or mitigation waiver that's possible. And so staff, for your consideration, presented this potential clause within the development agreement amendment that where or if road impact fee credits are provided to the developer for such offsite improvements, the county may elect to limit or reduce the corresponding value of an economic development impact fee waiver for the project. So certainly a matter for the board to contemplate as part of this development agreement and explore with the applicant requesting the adjustment to the established agreement. So in sum, the staff is recommending the board evaluate the proposed development agreement as modified, explore any content with the applicant and staff, schedule a second reading at your scheduled May 19th, 2026 meeting to begin at 6 p.m. or soon thereafter. Of course, staff would provide public notice for that as well.
Thank you, Corey. Questions? Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the public.
Commissioner, I would recommend that you go ahead and do
the-
disclosures because we did another presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Clasby?
My disclosures on this item are the same for item 10A1.
My disclosures are the same as well.
Likewise, my disclosures are the same.
And likewise, mine are the same.
Thank you. This is a public hearing item. Anyone wishing to address the board? Seeing no movement, I'll close public comment, come back to the board for discussion. No discussion?
I have no discussion.
No discussion, okay. No? Well, I have a gavel, so I can't make a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, we'll be
Thank you,
back
Corey.
on May 19th for the second reading. Thank you.
We will see you then. Thank you. Have a good night. All right. And we're going to move into Pit Stop Mini Market next.
Madam Chair, we'll have Morgan Phelps, Associate Planner, up in just a moment.
Sounds good. Have a nice night, everyone.
I'll make note while Morgan's joining us, she is a newer member of the team, but months fly by quite quickly. But this is first item before the Board of County Commissioners. Go easy on her. She is an AICP candidate. She has her master's degree and is a great contributor to our team. We're looking forward to more presentations from her to the board.
Nice to meet you, Morgan. Welcome aboard.
Well, with an intro like that, I better not mess this up, huh?
No pressure.
None at all. Just again, for the record, my name is Morgan Phelps. I'm an associate planner with the Planning Division, and I am presenting item 10A6. This is the Pit Stop Mini Market conditional use permit to sell packaged beer and wine for off-site consumption in the commercial neighborhood zoning district. This is the public notice that we put out for this meeting. We had our ad run in the mail on April 22nd. Sorry. And we sent out mailers on April 23rd. We also updated the sign after the April 17th P&Z meeting to include today's date for the meeting of May 5th, 2026. And this is the site that we are looking at. This is a 4,481 square foot commercial suite within this set of suites. And they are not making any physical changes to the site. They're just occupying. And it is located between Pandora Avenue, Palomar Parkway, and Turnpike Theater Road. This is a close-up of the site, identifying the loading zone and the dumpster that's on site that will be used. One of the conditions of approval that I'll mention later is an enclosure for the dumpster that will be provided within 60 days of approval, just to spruce it up a little bit. This is a zoning map. We have the property in the center. There is a strip of commercial neighborhood zoning going from southwest to northeast, and it is surrounded by primarily residential zoning with RMH 5, residential mobile home 5 to the north, and then otherwise being surrounded by RS 4 and RM 5. It's Lakewood Park, calm, quiet, cozy. And this is the mail-out response radius. We just sent it out 500 feet. It was a total of 43 mailers that were sent to the 43 property owners, and we did not receive any responses either in favor or against, though I do believe now is the appropriate time to mention that we did hold a neighborhood meeting for this project on March 27th. It was a Friday night at 6 p.m., what everybody wants to be doing on a Friday night. And Mr. Fagan had 20 people there that were adamantly in favor of this project. They were all singing his praises about how he's an outstanding pillar of the community. So our recommendation at this time is that this be forwarded, or no, that this be approved. It does generally conform to the standards of review set forth in the Land Development Code, Section 110703, and it is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. And we're recommending that the board approve it, subject to the following conditions, of which there are 7. So first is that the boundary and topographic survey shall be required for any exterior site alterations or expansion of alterations related to the conditional use, with the exception of landscaping or signage. That is because we did not require an updated boundary survey for this process, as they were not making any site modifications. The hours of operation shall comply with the Code of Ordinances of St. Lucie County and State of Florida statutes, Chapter 561, Beverage Law Administration, and that means they will not be selling anything between the hours of 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. All alcoholic beverages sold on site shall be packaged for off-site consumption only. No on-site consumption shall be permitted. The Pit Stop Mini Market, Inc. shall implement procedures to ensure that no alcohol is sold to persons under 21, including employee training and ID verification policies. Alcohol-related signage shall comply with the county sign regulations and shall not be excessive or directed towards minors. The applicant shall obtain and maintain a valid license from the Florida Division of Alcoholic Beverages and Tobacco prior to commencing alcohol sales. And finally, within 60 days of approval, an enclosure and screening shall be provided for the dumpsters on site. And with that, I bring you to the planning and zoning recommendation. We met on April 16th, and it was voted unanimously to be approved. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Great job. Commissioner Lee, this is quasi judicial. Can I have you start with disclosures?
Staff.
I also was staff. Commissioner Lowry?
Staff Ben and Corey.
I've spoke with staff. I also attended the April 16th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and I've also spoken with Gabe Atkinson, who told me that many people in the community support this.
Awesome. All right, with that, this is a public hearing item, so I'm going to open it up to the public. If there's anyone wishing to address the board. I saw excitement. Come on. No, you don't want to come up and share it with us? No. Good evening.
How y'all doing? Justin Harrison again. So the Pit Stop used to be, the locals used to call it the Blue Store. They've been forced out and had to move next door. I'm there all the time. Everybody in the community is ready for their beer to come back so Billy can sell it to them. Tired of going somewhere else, so I said there's no reason not to approve them.
Thank you. All right, we're still under public comment. Seeing no movement, I'm going to close public comment and come back to the board. Questions, comments, or is there a motion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Clasby.
Quick question. Do we know what the hours of operation are of the business?
I do believe that it is from 7 a.m. to 11:30 p.m., though the applicant is here to confirm. Did I get that right? In the meantime, I'd like to make a note that they were previously across Palomar Parkway for 13 years with no code violations. I meant to mention that earlier. What's the hours?
Good evening.
Operation, dears?
I'm Catherine Potter. I am the manager for Pit Stop Mini Market. Our hours of operation are 5:30 in the morning to 11:30 at night. Monday through Saturday, and then Sunday we are 6 a.m. to 10:30 at night.
So my reason for asking that was I don't like restricting them only to 11:30 on the alcohol, because if they chose to extend their hours to midnight or after, I mean, I would like them to still be able to sell until the state mandated time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
You need a motion?
Yes, we do need a motion.
I make
Motion.
a motion to approve. However, I would like to take off the restriction of the 11:30 cutoff for alcohol sales and just revert to the state law.
State law. Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Great job. All right, and we're going to now move into Linda Vista Trails. This is also quasi-judicial. Commissioner Clasby?
I have spoken with staff on this one.
Staff talked about splitting the lots and the road that's nearby.
I spoke with our planning team and also Scott Mosher, the applicant, in regards to the overall project and what he's trying to achieve.
I spoke with staff and a neighbor, Connie Childs, about the project.
All right, we're all set.
Okay. Once again, Morgan Phelps for the record. This is Linda Vista Trails road paving waiver, and it is item 10A7. And I have Grant Chambers here, just for emotional support and to answer any questions we might have along the way.
Emotional support engineer.
So,
Bonus, she's funny.
Yeah, I like it.
So this is the public notice that we provided. We sent these out. The mailer was sent out on April 22nd, and the ad was published on April 24th. Provided ample time for anybody to come back with any responses. We had one person reach out, and they were just wondering why the road was being paved and if they would have to pay for it. And I was able to resolve that very quickly. So no objections or in favor. This is a map of the site. It is bookended between South 21st Street and Linda Vista Avenue, and directly to the north, approximately 900 feet to the north, is Edwards Road. And this is the zoning map. It is entirely RS4 with that one piece of RM5 down to the south. And this is the proposed site plan for splitting. It would be split into 5 so that there would be the existing home still accessing Linda Vista to the east, with 2 units added accessing Linda Vista, and then 2 added accessing South 21st Street on the west. So it's dividing that traffic so as to not put all 5 onto one or the other. And all of these lots are going to meet the 8,000 square foot minimum with a little bit of change, and they will be connected to central water and sewer. Both South 21st Street and Linda Vista Avenue are county-owned and maintained, but they are substandard. Currently, the county doesn't have either of them in their 5-year road paving plan, and the existing right-of-way width is sufficient for meeting county standards. I did take a field trip out there last week, took some pictures, drove on the road, and I can say that while it is moderately skinny, that is more than appropriate for the quiet residential streets that they are. There were no noticeable cracks or potholes or things that I had to swerve around. So it was overall a nice and pleasant street. And that was for 21st Street. This is for Linda Vista. They're both of that nice quality. And this is the road paving waiver criteria. This specifically applies for criteria number 1 to this situation, but I'll read them all for you. Road paving can be required that the road is not essential to providing adequate access to the proposed development and through the surrounding area, or that the road will be paved as part of the county's 5-year road program or an approved municipal service taxing or benefit unit, or that the access road does not have adequate right-of-way in which to construct the necessary paving improvements in accordance with county standards. So we're falling under criteria number 1. No additional paving is required in order to sufficiently access the sites. This is our analysis. Both Linda Vista and South 21st Street are not in the county's 5-year road paving program. Linda Vista Avenue and South 21st Street are county-owned and maintained, but substandard, and the existing right-of-way is sufficient. And the board may consider whether the road paving is essential to provide adequate access to the proposed development or replatting of the lots. Staff recommends that the board approve the road paving waiver. It is found to conform to the standards of review set forth in the Land Development Code section 70507B2, and it is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. And it has a few conditions of approval. It has no conditions of approval.
I think just one.
They're in whitening.
I did not put that part in there. Okay. Anyway, the developer shall include language on the plat stating that the owners, heirs, and assigns of the lots known as Linda Vista Trails to participate and shall be a yes vote in any lawfully established MSTU, MSBU, or other special assessment district created for the purpose of providing paving and or drainage improvements to Linda Vista Avenue or South 21st Street adjacent to the sites. And that's the one condition.
Got it. Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing item. Anyone wishing to address the board on this item? Good evening.
How are you doing?
Splendid.
Justin Harrison here again. So just full disclosure, I am working with Scott and Jessica on this project, but ultimately they're not adding any additional lots to the neighborhood. It was already previously platted. It's just where her dad ended up building the house back many years ago, didn't think about the future and how that was going to be split up later, right? So you're not really adding any additional traffic onto the road than what was already previously approved. On either side, I think laying it out on having the two lots on both sides rather than the previous plat where they could build or have access to both sides of the road, does limit a little bit of, additional traffic on one road or the other. So I don't really see any issue with it, considering that you already had it previously platted for that many houses to be there. But unfortunately, the house was just kind of built in the center of one of them.
Thank you. Still public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this item? Seeing no movement, I'm going to close public comment, come back to the board. Questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Excellent. Congratulations. Thank you. All right, and now we are moving on for our ear amendment. Good evening, Ben.
Good evening. Again, good evening, Chair Fowler and Commissioners. Ben Balser, Planning and Development Services Director. For the record, tonight I'm presenting item 10A5, which is the adoption hearing for the county's comprehensive plan evaluation and appraisal review. It's also known as the ear-based amendments. As a reminder, these amendments are required by the state every 7 years and ensure that our comprehensive plan reflects the current conditions and plans for at least 10 years into the future. Our last ear update was in 2018, so this round includes new census data, new population projections, and adjustments for applicable state law changes. Tonight's adoption hearing is a continuation of last year's September 2nd public hearing where we reviewed the entire comprehensive plan to consider transmittal to the state. At that meeting, the board voted to transmit the amendments to the state, who have since reviewed the amendments and provided written comments and objections that need to be addressed before the board takes action on the adoption. The State Land Planning Agency, Florida Commerce, identified 5 policies that are considered more restrictive or burdensome than the currently adopted comprehensive plan. This stems from the 2025 statutory changes limiting local governments from adopting land use regulations that are more restrictive or burdensome than those in place prior to August 2024. Staff monitored this legislative session for clarifications. However, no changes were adopted, and as a result, we have revised the amendments to address the state's concerns. As we went over in the transmittal hearing, our comprehensive plan includes 10 elements that the state requires, as well as 4 optional local elements. Based on the comments from the state, we have made additional amendments to 5 of the required elements. Those include the future land use element, transportation element, infrastructure element, the coastal management element, and the capital improvements element. All the changes since the transmittal hearing are included in the agenda materials, and they're highlighted in yellow and in strike-through and underline format, so it's easy for the public and the board to view those within the agenda. I'll walk through all of the changes briefly. First, the state identified 3 policies within the future land use element as more restrictive or burdensome that needed to be reverted back to the current adopted policy before the board acts on the adoption. The first 2 policies are related to 1.1.1.2a and 1.1.1.2b, which describes the county's Ag 5 and Ag 2.5 land use designation. In that case, staff in the transmittal package changed the highlighted word should to shall with regards to the need for development activity unrelated to crop production in excess of 200 acres to identify appropriate funding mechanisms to operate and maintain infrastructure. While the county's land development regulations already require infrastructure to be in place concurrent with development, the state interpreted the change from should to shall as more restrictive. The state's other objection in the future land use element was in subsection J of the same policy, and this relates to the commercial land use designation, where staff added language that would require all commercial development to be served with public or private services or facilities prior to development. To address the state's concerns, staff has removed the added language and reverted back to the current adopted policy within this section of the comprehensive plan. The Florida Department of Transportation did not provide any objections, but they did provide some technical assistance comments, and staff addressed those through amendments to the transportation element. The first one is staff amended outdated terminology of the word accident to crash, and that's the industry standard. Next, at FDOT's request, we added language to policy 2.1.1.3 that adds a consultation component with the Florida Department of Transportation when the county is considering infrastructure needs on the state's strategic intermodal system. And the last suggestion by FDOT was to include language as a footnote in the table in policy 2.3.1.2, allowing the county to consider assisting and funding the construction of sidewalk gaps along Indrio Road, US 1, Kings Highway and Turnpike Feeder Road, and State Road 70 or Okeechobee Road. This doesn't create a mandate for the county, but it preserves our ability to consider future funding for sidewalks within those areas. Florida Commerce also identified updates to level of service standards in the infrastructure element as more restrictive. While these standards reflect current utility planning documents, the state considers them more restrictive when incorporated into the comprehensive plan. To address this, we reverted to the existing adopted standards and will revisit these updates through future comprehensive plan amendments. The Department of Environmental Protection provided a technical assistance comment related to policy 4.D.1.5.3, where they requested adding a deadline to adopt language required by section 163.3177, subsection 6C, that requires all local governments containing developments of more than 50 residential lots with a density of more than 1 septic system per acre to consider the feasibility of providing sanitary sewer services within a 10-year planning horizon. In order to comply with FDEP's comment, staff added the deadline of December 28th to update the comprehensive plan in order to comply with that state statute. The next addition to the coastal management element was an error where I omitted the word county in policy 5.1.4.13. So that word has since been added to that policy. And similar to the level of service standards reverting in the infrastructure element, the table within policy 9.1.1.12 of the capital improvements element has been changed to reflect the outdated level of service standards for FPUA's potable water and our solid waste generation rates. Based on the technical review comments from the South Florida Water Management District, the list of potable water and sanitary sewer projects have been updated to include several of the recent or soon-to-be undertaken infrastructure improvement projects by the county. And those you'll see listed within the table that's highlighted in yellow. The CIP table was also updated to reflect the Phase 5 expansion project at the county's landfill, which was omitted in the transmittal. And also the future land use element, which contains a series of maps. Those maps have since been updated to reflect the most current available data since they had changed from the transmittal hearing. And based on these revisions, staff recommends approval of the EAR-based amendments as presented to ensure compliance with state law and allow the county to move forward with the updated comprehensive plan. And I'm available for any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. This is actually also a public hearing item, so anyone wishing to address the board on this item? Seeing no movement, come back to the board. Any questions, comments?
Chair.
Motion? Commissioner Klasky?
You know, it's kind of unfortunate that Senate Bill 180 exists because the changes that we're being required to make from shall to should, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I do have a lot of ideas once it expires as far as different things that we could do as a county. Could you remind us what that date is again that it expires?
Commissioner Klasby, Chair Fowler, that is October 2027.
Okay. And then I wanted something else added to the EAR amendments, except I told Ben in order to make sure our comp plan doesn't expire and we get everything done on time, I won't ask it to be done at this time. However, I would like to talk about it really quick. The portion of the code that requires RE zoned areas to go to PUD after 8 units is something that's been discussed specifically at a previous Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It's something that I've heard developers use as an excuse that they have to go to PUD, that they cannot develop under AR1, AG1, acre lots. They have to go to a PUD. So I'd like to give them that ability to go ahead and develop under their existing zoning and not be an impediment to it. So perhaps after this is approved or however the action's taken on it, we as a board could ask them to go ahead and bring that forward to us afterwards. Because in my opinion, and I think in some of my talks with administration, it doesn't sound like that would be more burdensome or restrictive. So aside from that, I'd like to make a motion to approve this item.
And I'll second.
Second, yeah.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. All right, and County Attorney.
Catherine Barbieri, County Attorney, Chair, Commissioners. This is just correcting an error, Scrivener's error. So ordinance 26-011 is correcting a Scrivener's errors in ordinance 26004. On March 17th, the board adopted 26004, which scheduled a referendum on November 3rd to allow the electors to consider continuing levying the 0.5% infrastructure surtax. Unfortunately, in the ordinance that was there prior to this one, it's been on the books for quite a while. There was unclear language in section 42-253, which appeared to exclude prepaid calling arrangements, which are required by Florida statute to have that tax applied to them. This error, this language was pointed out to us by the Department of Revenue and asked us to fix it. We are bringing it forward. They have approved the language that's in the ordinance that we have there that just says that we'll comply with the Florida statutes on where the tax is applied, rather than trying to be more specific. They've approved that, and we are asking for approval.
All right. This is also a public hearing item. Anyone wishing to address the board? Seeing no movement, come back to the board. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We already did our regular agenda item, so that brings us down to commissioner comments. Commissioner Lee, anything?
I do. Regarding Commissioner Claspy's last comment on the PUDs, I would happen to agree with him. I would love to see some changes in that. I've been speaking with staff. The town, countries, and villages sides that we have going on the Indrill Road area. Justin had mentioned how it doesn't match the name. And if you start looking at some of the communities in our area, PGA, where I live in Sandpiper, we have everything in those communities. We have large, expensive homes. We have townhouses. We have condos. We have the whole array of living quarters there, and I'd like to see more of those units come. And the only way that I know to do it is, obviously we need to talk about it a little bit, but start lessening some of the sidewalks and curbs on incentivizing larger lots. You look at the Indian River Estates and areas like that, they don't have sidewalks, they don't have curbs. And quite frankly, I don't think any of them want them in the larger lots. I do like the idea of the city being the central unit where you do have the sidewalks. Anyway, I would like to see more comments and discussions on that and how we can change the PUD or go down your route to make the developers look at making more areas like that.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, anything?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just want to publicly give all the nurses out there a shout out and thank you. I know nurses are the backbone to our healthcare system, and many of the hospitals are very understaffed and overworked. And I have one living at home with me today, and want to thank her for all that she does. And also honoring our firefighters, I think, this week. So I've got one of those at home as well. So thank you, nurses, firefighters, teachers, everyone that makes St. Lucie County a better place to live.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Claspy.
So, going on the thanks parade there, I'd like to thank all teachers, St. Lucie County, state of Florida, across the United States. Teachers are the foundation of this country. Nurses are too, but teachers are really what sometimes inspire nurses to become nurses. And I actually still happen to hold my education certificate here in Florida. I have two sisters that are teachers here in St. Lucie County still. So I come from a family of educators, and I mean to tell you that is quite the job, being a teacher in St. Lucie County. And God bless them. And also this week is testing week, so a lot of the schools are going through PM3. So that's a real trying time for teachers. So if you see a teacher, give them some coffee. Another thing is FDOT announced that Northbridge will be diverting traffic in the middle of May 15th, weather permitting. So just making sure that that's the correct date. So that's what the email said, May 15th, new traffic on Northbridge. I have a question really quick for staff, though, about that. When will the boat ramp open?
We are trying to tie in, once they're completely done with construction, then we will be opening the boat ramp, because right now a lot of what they're utilizing space-wise would interfere if we open it up, and it would really mess up and slow down that construction. So we have agreed to wait for that to finish and be fully operational, then we would get the boat wrapped up and ribbon cutting and open it up.
Okay, and so that, just for that point, I've had a lot of questions asked about that of me, and that makes sense because while the traffic will be diverted, the old bridge still has to be demolished. I'm sure they need a lay-down area and different things for that portion. So if memory serves me correctly, 2027 is when construction should be completed?
That is what FDOT tentatively said. We're hoping that they stick to their schedule.
Okay. So hopefully we get to open up the North Bridge Causeway boat ramp prior to the new one on Taylor Creek. That's all my comments.
All right. And So I just have a few as well. This month is Mental Health Awareness Month, and 3 of us are wearing gray. Sorry, Commissioner Lee. So wear gray in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. Tomorrow's reminder is also the Employee Recognition Picnic, so hope to see you down there for some hot dogs and prize giveaways. And to just piggyback off your comment about once we can do some changes to SB 180, because Commissioner Lee will recall, we started this conversation, but I would love us to take a look at what we allow for open space, like if they're already required by law for stormwater and things of that nature currently, obviously under our code, that counts as open space. And at one point we had a informal, and I don't know.
Yes.
There probably just wasn't consensus, but I really would love this board to take a look back at that when we're able to. And that's it.
One more thing, I would be remiss to not go ahead and call it out, but my executive aide, Christine, this is her 1-year anniversary working with me.
Congratulations.
And she came over from the property appraiser. So I'm going to tell you right now, vital asset to District 1, and the amount of phone calls that she helps me screen through and get answers to, I couldn't do it without her.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Very nice guy.
All right, Commissioner. See, you're going to run for commissioner one day. I'm just like putting it out there. Mr. Landry, over to you, sir.
Really hoping for at least 4 more minutes of comments. But unfortunately, we won't.
Oh, you know
so
what? I might have forgotten something. Wait a minute. No, go ahead.
I took the under.
I know.
So the Board of County Commissioners will hold an informal meeting on Tuesday, May 12th, 2026 at 9 a.m. here in these commission chambers. And then the Board of County Commissioners will also hold a regular meeting on Tuesday, May 19th, 2026 at 6 p.m. here in these commission chambers located at 2300 Virginia Avenue. And Eric will close us out with the final announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Summer's right around the corner, and the Oxbow Eco Center has week-long day camps for students from elementary school through high school, taking place June 8th through July 31st. Some camps already have a wait list, so don't delay and sign up now. They can find out more details at the Oxbow's website at oxboweco.com.
Thank you, Eric. And with that, we are adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your night, guys.